Ole Miss 28, Georgia 10. This is one of our favorite games in that it was sort of a monsoon.
Early, yeah. And then you had like the weird
sort of.
foggy pyro third, fourth quarter exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, where they had to wait a little bit for the smoke to clear. That was weird. Jaxson Dart was injured on the first possession of this game when he threw an interception. Set up a Georgia touchdown on 4th and goal that they converted. He came back in later in the first quarter. His left ankle was heavily taped up. You messaged me later on in this game, this dude is a warrior. This dude
total animal.
Built different. What do you think got that emotion out of you? What was it that he did that you saw that you were like, man, this guy's different?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's Austin Simmons, his backup. The lefty came in and drove them down the field for a score. That was super impressive in this kind of moment, right? Under the lights, at home, with the expectations of being able to crawl into or remain in playoff contention against Georgia, and to come out cold, as Austin Simmons was, and not expecting to play in that moment, was great. Was spreading the ball around, was moving around, was really strong. And so Jaxson Dart comes back in, is making plays with his feet, is throwing confidently, which I think is extremely difficult to do given his ankle's all taped up. And I don't know, no Trey Harris in this one, no problem on a certain level. Like, they're down key dudes on both sides of the ball. And there was a certain amount of confidence that Ole Miss played with on both sides of the ball. And the amount of pressure they were able to put on to Carson Beck. There are a lot of really interesting Georgia questions following this performance, and it's very specific to the context of where Georgia is. Ole Miss came into this game sacking quarterbacks like crazy. They may be the FBS or the Power Conference team leading the nation in sacks, and to do it against Georgia, to do it against a team that has the offensive brain power, allegedly, the offensive skill, I think there's definitely offensive skill there, and still have that Georgia team have no answer. I know you asked about Jaxson Dart, but it's a roundabout way of saying, like, everything kind of echoed the Jaxson Dart experience, where he was just kind of unfazed by the moment. The defense was unfazed by the moment. And Ulysses Bentley with some of his runs, unfazed by the moment. And so that's a lot of what we talked about coming into this game, that Jaxson Dart has been underwhelming to his own standard of play in these bigger games against Alabama, against Georgia, in these moments against LSU earlier this year. And you come out of that game saying, like, man, Georgia couldn't handle that moment at all. No. Georgia, this is another game in which Georgia couldn't handle the moment. They did against Texas, but they couldn't initially against Alabama. They couldn't rise to the occasion last week for a good stretch of that game against Florida until DJ Lagway got hurt, and certainly couldn't against Kentucky. And that's just, it's new for us watching recent Georgia.
It's uncomfortable. I mean, I think the big question that I had coming into this one is, could Ole Miss meet that moment?
Right.
I still have PTSD from talking about it a year ago as Ole Miss played against Georgia, and they got smoked by 35. It was like, okay, well, here we are again with Ole Miss. It's going to be the same story over and over again. You're right. They rose to them. This was a breakthrough.
Which is that not the term I use when you pick Georgia?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I mean, this was that breakthrough. It truly was that breakthrough moment. And unquestionably, the story here was that Ole Miss defense.
Yeah.
Which was lights out. They held Georgia to 245 total yards. They forced 3 turnovers here. That's the headlining stuff.
Yeah.
After the opening series, though, to your point, Ole Miss, 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. They forced 4 fumbles. And, of course, they had an interception of Carson Beck. Carson Beck's had a really rough go of things. He also had a fumble in this one. So I think from that standpoint, you look at this game and you say, well, whereas a year ago, Ole Miss got blown out of the water and did not look like they even belonged on the same field as Georgia, perhaps it is through their own portaling. Perhaps it is through whatever attrition Georgia has experienced. Maybe it's just a down year for Georgia. At quote-unquote down year, they're still damn good. You get my point. For whatever reason, this is the moment that Ole Miss was able to pounce. They win this game 28-10. I think Ole Miss still has a very real chance to get into this playoff. We talked about it on the preview show. They need to keep winning. They need to keep looking like this. But 2 weeks in a row now, given how they looked a week ago, back in week 10, and now this week in week 11, beating Georgia, it's a pretty big deal. Couple left. We'll see where it goes from here. It feels like the SEC is kind of all over the place at the moment, but definitely a breakthrough. I do want to ask something about Georgia, though, if I could, real quick.
Please.
Dunzo!
Are they donezo?
What's the record?
Georgia right now, 2 losses.
Right. Bama and Ole Miss. Not bad losses, especially with how Bama performed tonight against LSU on the road. No.
Probably out of the SEC title chase.
Yeah, likely out of the SEC chase. But no, there's so much football in so many different conferences. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz wasn't totally wrong after Mizzou beat Oklahoma and said, I'm just glad we're still in the playoff hunt. Not totally wrong, because they also have 2 losses. Weren't pretty losses, Mizzou. But no, in this conference, if you finish 10-2, you're in that conversation.
Big win for Ole Miss, to say the least.
Big, huge win for Ole Miss. Hope Jaxson Dart is able to heal up a little bit. Lower body injury, whatever the ankle injury was, if he just rolled it pretty badly or sprained it lightly, whatever the injury is. Hope it works out. Although they seemed like they might be in good hands with Austin Simmons.
Looked okay. Looked all right.
He can rest up. Yeah.